Every single time you take a bite out of a sandwich, your body starts performing this crazy feat of chemical engineering.
Oh, totally. A feat that, like, our most advanced multi-billion-dollar factories still can't perfectly replicate.
Right. You just take these raw, chaotic materials, you dump them into a biological loading bay, and through a series of highly volatile chemical reactions, you extract pure, usable energy.
It's honestly wild when you frame it that way.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are super thrilled to have you, the learner, here with us today.
We really are.
And our mission today is, well, it's an ambitious one. We've got this a massive stack of junior high integrated science textbook summaries sitting right in front of us.
Huge stack.
Yeah. And it covers biology, agriculture, physics, computer science. But we are absolutely not going to just read these like some boring grocery list of facts.
No, definitely not, because we're looking at all of this through a single unifying lens today, which is systems and transformations.
Yeah.
Because when you strip away all that field-specific jargon, you're really just looking at a universe that takes inputs, processes them, and forces them to become outputs.
Exactly.
So the fundamental logic that governs a human body digesting an apple, it's remarkably similar to the logic of, like, a computer routing data through a motherboard.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start with that first factory.
Hmm.
The one we are all currently piloting right now, the human engine.
The most relatable one, yeah.
Right. You and I, we are walking input-output processing plants.
Yeah.
And looking at the breakdown of the digestive system here, the alimentary canal, which is really just that long, specialized tube from the mouth to the anus, it operates like a reverse assembly line.
A disassembly line, right?
Yeah, a disassembly line. You aren't building a car. You are meticulously taking a sandwich apart down to its base molecular components. So carbs, proteins, fats.
Right.
Also, you can ship them across the blood-brain barrier and, into your muscle tissue.
It's a phenomenal piece of sequential engineering, honestly. And that breakdown requires two distinct phases operating in tandem. So you have the mechanical and the chemical.
Okay, mechanical first.
Right. The
Got
mechanical
that.
phase doesn't just crush food randomly.
Mhm.
You have highly specialized tools for specific materials.
Like different drill bits.
Exactly like that. Your incisors act as chisels for cutting. Then your canines are designed for tearing fibrous tissue.
Right, the pointy ones.
Yeah, and then the premolars and molars at the very back act as millstones. They just grind the input down to massively increase its surface area.
Which is super important because if you don't increase the surface area mechanically, the chemical phase basically can't do its job efficiently.
Exactly.
And this is where it gets totally wild to me. The text highlights enzymes, which are biological catalysts, right? In your mouth, just the physical act of chewing triggers your saliva to release amylase, which is an enzyme that specifically hunts down starches.
Right, so that bread is already being chemically dismantled before you even swallow it.
So fast. Then it hits the stomach, which releases pepsin to break apart the complex proteins. And finally, the small intestine deploys lipase to break down the fats.
And all of this is happening completely autonomously. You don't even think about it. But consider the environment required for that chemical phase to actually work.
Yeah.
Pepsin, for instance, only functions in a highly acidic environment, which is exactly why your stomach is essentially churning a vat of hydrochloric acid.
Okay, wait. I always get stuck on this exact point.
Oh, the acid thing.
Yeah, if my stomach is basically this highly acidic bag, churning out all these powerful juices and enzymes specifically designed to dissolve tough meat,
Right.
and my stomach is literally made of meat, why doesn't it digest itself? I mean, it seems like a massive biological design flaw.
It totally sounds like one, until you look at the specialized defenses of the hardware itself.
Okay, how does it defend itself?
So the stomach wall secretes this really thick, constantly renewing layer of alkaline mucus.
Gross, but okay.
It's very necessary. This mucus acts as both a physical and a chemical barrier. So the internal environment is perfectly calibrated to obliterate the input, while the hardware actively shields itself from its own processing software.
That is amazing. And then once the breakdown is complete, the small intestine uses these tiny finger-like structures called villi to absorb everything, right?
Yes, the villi drastically maximize the internal surface area, absorbing all those dismantled nutrients directly into the bloodstream.
But the human engine can't just run on, like, sandwich paste.
No, definitely not.
It needs a spark to actually burn that fuel, which is where the respiratory system comes in. It's essentially a dedicated gas pipeline.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Your nostrils filter the air, send it down the trachea, which branches into the bronchi, and then finally dead ends in the alveoli.
And the alveoli are where the magic actually happens.
Exactly. Oxygen crosses into the blood, and the toxic exhaust carbon dioxide is pushed out.
And managing that exhaust is just as critical as absorbing the fuel. I mean, every processing plant produces waste, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And the human body's excretory system just works overtime to maintain internal equilibrium. The kidneys filter out urea and excess salts to form urine. The skin vents heat and water through sweat. The lungs, like you just mentioned, handle the gaseous carbon dioxide.
Right.
And the liver acts as this ultimate hazmat facility. It neutralizes toxins and breaks down dead red blood cells so they don't clog the whole system.
Which brings up what happens when the inputs are wrong.
The system fails.
Yeah, it breaks down. And the text goes into malnutrition, which I don't know about you, but I always just associated that word with starvation, like just not having enough calories.
And other people do.
But it's actually about highly specific system failures based on exactly which chemical input is missing.
Yes, very specific.
Like if you chronically lack protein, the body simply cannot build or repair tissue. And that results in kwashiorkor, where you see that swollen abdomen and thinning limbs.
Right. And think about the actual mechanisms behind some of those other deficiencies. If your input lacks vitamin C, you develop scurvy.
Which isn't just a pirate thing.
No, it's not. It's not
Right.
just bleeding gums. Vitamin C is the chemical input required to synthesize collagen.
Oh, wow.
That holds your tissues and blood vessels together. So without it, the structural pipes of your system literally start to leak.
That is terrifying.
Or take rickets, which is caused by a lack of vitamin D and calcium. Without those specific minerals, the body cannot harden the skeletal framework.
So the bones get soft.
Exactly, meaning the actual chassis of the human engine bends and bows under the basic force of gravity.
It's such a delicate, terrifying balance. The engine is resilient, but the demands are just incredibly strict.
They are.
Which makes me think about where we get those inputs in the first place.
Yeah.
To keep the human engine running without breaking down into scurvy or rickets, we have to fuel it constantly. We have to manipulate the earth itself to manufacture that fuel. So we're moving from the human biology system to the farm engine.
And the absolute foundation of that agricultural engine is the soil.
Oh, yeah. Dirt.
Well, soil. It is the physical medium where the initial energy transformation happens. But soil is highly variable, and it's classified basically by its particle size.
Okay.
At one extreme, you have sandy soil. Large particles, which means massive air gaps. It drains water entirely too fast and holds almost no nutrients.
Not great for farming.
No. And at the other extreme is clay soil. Microscopic particles tightly packed together. It holds water so aggressively that it easily becomes waterlogged.
Right. And then sitting perfectly in the middle is loamy soil, which the text treats as like the undisputed holy grail of farming.
It really is. Moderate water retention, high fertility, good aeration.
But let me challenge this for a second.
Okay.
If loamy soil is mathematically the quote-unquote ideal system for plant growth, why do farmers even bother planting in sandy or clay soils? Are they just fundamentally broken systems?
What's fascinating here is that you rarely get to choose your starting conditions.
Oh.
Right. You inherit a piece of the earth, and you just have to make it work. That is the entire genesis of agricultural engineering, forcing non-ideal systems to become productive.
Oh, I see.
So if you're stuck with sandy soil that just bleeds water, you have to intervene with artificial irrigation.
And the sources break down how we do that based on the technology we have available.
Right.
So you have surface irrigation, which is literally just using gravity to flood water over the ground.
Very old school.
Yeah. Then sprinkler irrigation, which uses pressurized pipes and nozzles to mimic rain. And then the really modern one, drip irrigation, which delivers a slow, steady trickle of water directly into the plant's root zone, which massively minimizes evaporation.
Exactly. And conversely, if you're working with clay soil that waterlogs, you have the exact opposite problem. You have to implement artificial drainage.
Because the roots can drown.
Literally, yes. When soil is waterlogged, all those tiny air spaces are filled with water. Plant roots are biological systems. They need to perform respiration. They need oxygen.
Right.
If they're submerged, they just suffocate and rot. You also have to manipulate the chemical inputs of the soil through nutrient cycling.
Like the nitrogen cycle.
Yes, the nitrogen cycle is constantly moving nitrogen through the ecosystem, but farming depletes it very quickly.
So humans intervene again.
Always. We apply organic manure, like compost, to slowly rebuild the soil structure, or if we need it fast, we dump inorganic chemical fertilizers, like NPK.
Which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right?
Exactly, to give the system an immediate massive chemical boost.
So we hack the soil, we grow the plants, and then we feed those plants to our livestock to create a totally different, more energy-dense fuel for ourselves.
Right, meat and dairy.
And the sources note that farm animals need the exact same balanced rations we do. Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, water.
They're biological engines, too.
But look at cows for a second. We just talked about the human disassembly line. A cow is doing the exact same thing, but it requires 4 whole stomach chambers to process its food.
Yeah, the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum.
Right. Why the massive hardware upgrade just to eat grass?
Because grass is heavily composed of cellulose, and cellulose is an incredibly tough, complex carbohydrate.
Okay.
The human digestive system, for all its amazing efficiency, simply doesn't possess the enzymes to break down cellulose.
It just goes right through us.
Yeah, it just passes through as dietary fiber. But cattle, sheep, goats, they're ruminants. Their 4-chambered stomach acts as a massive biological fermentation vat.
Oh, wow.
They literally harbor specialized bacteria that break down the cellulose for them. It allows them to take an input that is entirely useless for human energy needs, like grass, and transform it into high-quality protein.
It's basically biological alchemy.
Truly.
But whether it's a cow fermenting tough cellulose or a farmer digging a drainage ditch in clay soil, none of this happens without energy.
Nothing happens without energy.
Which brings us to the immutable rules that govern every single one of these factories: physics and chemistry.
The foundational building blocks of all these transformations are atoms.
Yeah.
You know, a nucleus of positively charged protons and neutral neutrons orbited by negatively charged electrons. And when matter interacts within these systems, it undergoes changes that we categorize into 2 types.
Right. Physical changes and chemical changes. And the distinction here is really about permanence.
Exactly.
A physical change is temporary. The underlying substance remains exactly the same. So you melt an ice cube, it's still H2O.
Right.
But a chemical change is permanent. The atomic bonds are actually broken and rearranged to form entirely new substances.
And you usually know a chemical change has occurred if you see a drastic color change, a temperature shift, or like gas bubbles forming.
Right. So a cow turning grass into milk isn't just a physical change of chewing. It's this astronomical series of chemical changes.
And enacting those chemical changes, or even just physically moving matter, requires work. And in physics, the definition of work is brutally strict.
Oh, I know.
It is heavily reliant on mathematics. Work is defined entirely as force multiplied by distance. The standard unit is the joule.
And power is just the rate of that work, right? Work divided by time measured in watts.
Exactly.
Okay, I have always deeply struggled with this strict physics definition of work because it completely invalidates human effort.
How so?
Let me give you a scenario. So if I push a heavy brick wall all day long, I am pushing with every ounce of strength I have. My muscles are burning, I'm gasping for breath, completely drenched in sweat.
Okay.
But the wall obviously doesn't move a single inch. According to the textbook definition of physics, I am mathematically doing zero work.
That is correct. In the realm of physics, you did absolutely zero work on that wall.
But I am completely exhausted. My human engine is redlining.
And your biological exhaustion was incredibly real. Your body was rapidly performing respiration, breaking down glucose, contracting muscle fibers, flooding your system with lactic acid.
Right.
You expended a massive amount of biological energy. But because the distance the wall moved was zero, and any force multiplied by zero is zero, no physical work was actually transferred to the object.
So if no work was done on the wall, where did all my biological energy actually go? I mean, it didn't just vanish.
No, it was lost entirely as heat. That sweat drenching you. That was your excretory system desperately trying to vent the massive amount of thermal waste your muscle contractions were generating.
Oh, man.
And this perfectly highlights a universal truth about systems: machine efficiency. There is no such thing as a 100% efficient machine.
Ever.
Never. Not a tractor, not a pulley, and certainly not the human body. In every physical system across the universe, the useful work output is always less than the energy input because some fraction of that energy is inevitably lost to friction and heat.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, even if it is a little frustrating for my ego.
I get that.
And it's not just the physical exertion of energy we have to understand, it's how we perceive the universe around us. The text takes this really interesting detour into light energy and vision.
Light is the fundamental input our biological hardware uses to map reality, yeah.
And the cardinal rule of light is rectilinear propagation, which is really just a fancy way of saying it travels in perfectly straight lines.
It does. And the objects we perceive fall into two main categories. Luminous objects, like the sun or light bulb, which act as sources generating their own light,
Okay.
and non-luminous objects, like the textbook in front of us or the moon. They only become visible because light strikes them, reflects off their surface, and travels in a straight line directly into our optical receptors.
Right, and the human eye is just a highly evolved physical lens system. Light hits the cornea, passes through the pupil, and the biological lens refracts or bends that light to focus it into a sharp image right on the retina at the back of the eyeball. So, the learner, right now, as you are listening to this, if you are looking at a screen or just walking down the street, the lenses in your eyes are physically flexing to refract light perfectly onto your retinas.
It's amazing.
But just like the digestive tract or a farming irrigation setup, the biological hardware can have structural defects.
Very common ones, too.
Yeah.
If the physical shape of the eyeball is even slightly elongated or compressed,
Yeah.
the focal point completely misses the retina.
Right. So if you have myopia short-sightedness, the image focuses in front of the retina, making distant objects blurry.
Yes. And you hack the system by placing a concave lens in front of the eye to diverge the light outward slightly before it enters.
And conversely, if you have hypermetropia or long-sightedness, the image focuses behind the retina.
Right. And you correct this with a convex lens, which converges the light inward. You are artificially manipulating the input so the flawed biological hardware can process it correctly.
It's all just inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
So take a step back and look at the through line here. We've analyzed biological machines chemically dismantling sandwiches.
We've looked at agricultural systems terraforming the Earth to maximize caloric output. We've explored the cold, hard physics dictating work, energy loss, and the refraction of light.
It's a lot of ground.
It is. And all of this leads us perfectly to the ultimate modern system, the one where human beings actually figured out how to model decision-making itself using the flow of electricity.
The digital engine.
Yes.
We are entering the domain of information and communication technology, or ICT. And before we get into the hardware, we really have to understand the conceptual transformation at the heart of it all. Data versus information.
Right, and assuming most of us know what data is generally, let's look at the transformation. Data is the raw ore. It's the unorganized numbers, facts, and inputs being dumped into the loading bay.
Exactly.
Information is the refined steel. It is data that has been logically processed, structured, and organized into something a user can actually make a decision with.
Right.
But how does a piece of silicon and metal actually do that logical processing? It does it using logic gates. These are microscopic electronic circuits that make decisions based entirely on binary inputs.
And binary meaning there are only two possible states, right?
Yes, a 0 representing low voltage or off, and a 1 representing high voltage or on. By meticulously routing electrical currents through a maze of these gates, computers perform complex logic.
And the rules governing these gates are mapped out using truth tables.
Right.
Now, staring at a truth table of ones and zeros can feel like looking at the Matrix, so let's try to map this onto something human. The text focuses on three fundamental gates: A and D, or R, and not.
Okay.
Think of them as having distinct personalities. The A and D gate is the incredibly strict parent. The rule is absolute. You can go to the party only if your room is clean and your homework is done.
I love that.
Right. Both inputs must be a 1 for the output to be a 1. If even a single input is a 0, the output is 0.
That's a perfect behavioral model. And if you look at the physical circuitry, an AND gate acts like two switches wired in series.
Okay, in series.
Yeah. The electrical current must pass through the first switch, and then it must pass through the second switch to complete the circuit. If either switch is open, if either requirement isn't met, the flow of electricity stops dead.
Makes sense. But what about the OR gate?
Right, the OR gate.
The OR gate is the cool ant. The parameters are much looser. You can have dessert if you eat your vegetables, or R if you just ask nicely.
So much more forgiving.
Totally. The output is 1 if at least one of the inputs is a 1. The only way you get a 0 output is if both inputs are 0.
Physically, an OR gate is constructed like two switches wired in parallel. So the electrical current approaches a fork in the road. It has two distinct paths it can take to complete the circuit.
Oh, I see.
As long as one single path is closed, the power flows through and the system registers a 1.
I really love that analogy. And finally, you have the NOT gate, which engineers also call an inverter.
Right, the inverter.
This one is unique because it only takes a single input. I view the NOT K as the contrarian teenager who makes it their life's mission to do the exact opposite of whatever you tell them.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, if you input a 1, the output is mathematically flipped to a 0. If you input a 0, it outputs a 1. It just reverses the reality of the signal.
It seems so simple, but by combining billions of these strict parents, cool ants, and contrarian teenagers into microscopic, hyperdense circuits, we can process raw, chaotic data into the highly structured information that runs global finance, global communication, and modern civilization itself.
It is genuinely awe-inspiring when you view it all from 10,000 feet. From the amylase enzyme in our saliva chemically breaking the bonds of a starch molecule to a massive diesel tractor fighting the physics of friction across a field of loamy soil, to billions of microscopic logic gates routing voltage to stream this very audio into your ears. Everything, everywhere is a system. It is all an interconnected web governed by inputs, outputs, and the relentless, unavoidable tax of inefficiency.
It is the grand, unified architecture of how the universe functions.
And you, the learner, you've just absorbed a phenomenal amount of science today. Think about the conceptual ground we just covered.
A huge amount.
We deconstructed the nitrogen cycle. We explored the biological limits of physical work. We bent light using convex lenses. And we built digital logic circuits out of raw electricity. You are walking away from this with a profound structural understanding of how the everyday world operates beneath the surface.
But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
A thought that connects the strict laws of physics to the digital world we all live in. We established earlier that absolutely no physical machine is 100% efficient, right?
Right, because let's hear it.
A thought that connects the strict laws of physics to the digital world we all live in. We established earlier that absolutely no physical machine is 100% efficient, right?
Right, because energy is constantly lost to friction and heat.
Exactly. We intuitively understand this when we are drenched in sweat pushing a brick wall, or when we feel the heat radiating off a combustion engine.
Sure.
But as we move deeper and deeper into the information age, an era governed by the digital engine and trillions of microscopic logic gates, we tend to treat the digital world as if it is weightless, as if it is magic.
Right, it lives in the quote-unquote cloud. It feels completely ethereal.
Exactly. But there is no magic. If routing a physical electron through a microscopic A&D gate to process raw data into usable information requires physical energy, then what is the friction in our digital systems?
Oh, wow.
Every search query, every video stream, every artificial intelligence prompt requires billions of these logic gates to open and close, generating microscopic amounts of heat.
That adds up.
It does. Does our insatiable, exponentially growing hunger for digital information have a massive hidden physical cost to the planet in raw power consumption and thermal exhaust that we are collectively failing to acknowledge?
That is a brilliant, really heavy question to end on because it reminds us that the digital world is just as physical as the agricultural one.
It really is.
The next time you look at a sprawling factory or a cow grazing in a field or even your own reflection in a dark screen, remember, there is no magic. Just inputs, outputs, and the fascinating, exhausting transformations happening in between.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the systems around you.